Okay, I think we can get started. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us for another Builder Forum series here in July 2025. Today's topic is exciting. We're bridging a familiar topic that we're still learning about, and that's about step code and things all around that. But we're stepping into new ground today to touch on a topic that's going to be relevant to pretty much everybody in the room here, and that's on small housing, or also called gentle density, or enabled by something called Bill 44. So today's lecture is on small housing and step code, and the Building Energy Department of the Township of Langley presents David Sisk and Grant Gilron from Small Housing BC to tell us all about an introductory into small housing and Bill 44 and why that's relevant to you and why you should be interested in that. And we have Mark Bernhardt from Bernhardt Contracting to talk us through some step code tips, tricks, and all things that you want to know about that to make your life easier, meaning step 3, 4, and 5. Today's workshop's brought to you by the Green Buildings Department, the Township of Langley, with Stefan Tran, our technical assistant, Jean Surrender, our building energy specialist, and myself, manager of the Green Buildings Department. So let's get started. Before we go through our agenda, I would like to start our meeting in a good way, and I'd like to acknowledge that we are operating on the traditional territories of the Coast Salish peoples, and particularly acknowledge our relationships with the CACEA, Kwantlen, Matsqui, and SSMUH First Nations. So on the menu today, it's going to be a busy day. We have a quick recap and reminders from the Township of Langley, where they're going to have Small Housing BC talk about Bill 44, and small scale multi-unit housing, also called SSMUH. And we're going to have Mark talk about step code and adjacent matters. I'd like to direct you to the chat. We have a chat function here. Or dialogue, or even questions to your peers across the province here. And maybe you can start by using the chat by letting us know, where are you watching from? Okay, so let's have a bit of a recap from our last lecture. That was, I guess 2 or 3 months ago, and that was on step 4 and meeting EL3 of the Zero Carbon Step Code for Part 9 buildings. So some important things we learned last workshop for the Zero Carbon Step Code. What clarifications? There's still a lot of confusion around this new regulation, and we really wanted to make sure that people understand what's included and not included. So for example, where there may have been some confusion around auxiliary heating equipment, such as fireplaces, and I want to say auxiliary. This is really important to acknowledge that it's not needed to meet your primary load. It's an extra thing. If you have an extra fireplace not needed to meet the primary heating demand, it doesn't count. It's not included. It's invisible to the Zero Carbon Step Code. So if this is something you really want to have and your primary heating system can meet the demand, fill your boots. It's not included. It is not prohibited to have a fireplace. Cooking also. So if you have a gas range and you're following the performance path of the Zero Carbon Step Code, go nuts. It's not included. It has nothing to do with Zero Carbon Step Code compliance, as well as barbecue connections also have nothing to do with Zero Carbon Step Code compliance under the performance path. We also learned in the last workshop, because step code is performance-based, and really all that really means is you have unlimited options effectively to get to step 3, 4, and 5. And this group showed us that they had a step 3 building, and one way they got that all the way to step 4 and EL3. So they had a step 3 EL1 building, and they took that all the way to step 4 EL3. They decided to. do absolutely nothing to the step 3 EL1 building except for change the windows. They change these windows to triple glaze. So certainly not run-of-the-mill windows, but they chose those. They changed those to triple glaze, and snap, that became a step 4 EL3 at home. If that's not something you want to do, you have lots of options. Talk to your energy advisor early on in the project, and you can find multiple ways to get to step 4 and 5. And we have Mark Bernhardt here, who is a builder and a past president of CHBA and an active modeler and data analyst, and he'll be able to tell you much more than Gina and I can on multiple options. So do take advantage of this time. This workshop is on our tol.ca/gblearn. That's Green Buildings Learn. tol.ca/gblearn. Click the boot button on the page. We have that lecture posted on our online learning hub, Green Buildings on Demand. If you missed it, you can log on, make an account, watch the lecture at your leisure, whenever you want, and you will still get the credit. Start, guys. All right. Okay, this is important. Some compliance notes for all of you folk there. If you're building, particularly single family, this is important. Overheating in secondary suites. So this is something that you want to be aware of, particularly if you're building a single family or you're starting with a single family building permit. So let's look at the sequencing. When you have a single family dwelling, when you're applying for a single family dwelling without a secondary suite, so an unfinished basement or whatever, you're applying for that on your building permit, it's approved. You've demonstrated overheating compliance with the primary unit. But after BP is issued, the client or whatever says, oh, I want to finish this basement into a secondary suite. Okay, that's pretty typical. You must acknowledge that through the code itself, you must demonstrate overheating compliance with every dwelling unit, and your secondary suite is a dwelling unit. So do not kind of wait till the end to think about, oh, how am I going to meet this new regulation? Do acknowledge when you are applying for that permit that you are responsible for your secondary suite permit, that you are responsible to demonstrate compliance with overheating. Do take a look at our bulletin. We were the first to release a bulletin on compliance, on how to comply with overheating protection. There is also some support from the Building Safety Standards Branch, and as well as HVAC DC/TECA have a guide on complying with overheating protection. And maybe to some folks out there in the chat there, how are you complying? Are you using central air conditioning, a heat pump or air conditioner? Are you using mini splits for localized cooling? Maybe you could give some tips to your colleagues on what you're doing. Ooh. Some minor updates. It's not going to really impact your lives too much, but it's important that you acknowledge that, and you do make sure that your HVAC folk or EAs are aware of this. Screen. Yep. We have some updated forms. These are not new forms. I want to really highlight, these are not new forms. These are updated forms. And we have a form for heating, ventilation, and air conditioning system installation certification. The only change for all of you need to know there, and it's in that red box. This form has a variety of inputs. It's who's doing the work and kind of what's going on there. And we also we have been asking, what is the heating capacity of your system? And we want to know what the heating capacity of your system is, so we can align it with your CACEA F280 required calculations to make sure the sizing is aligned. Now that overheating protection is a law through BC building code, we have a new box that says, what is the cooling capacity? All we need to do is compare that cooling capacity that's written here against your CACEA F280 calculations, and we're good. It's just another input for your HVAC folk. And for our heating, ventilation, and air conditioning system design certification, it's the same document you've been doing for years. We've added a box that says that you certify that the cooling system. We did not have this because it was not required, but now we ask that it is certified that the cooling system has been designed in compliance with building code, gas directive, quality for forest air guidelines, CACEA or ASHRAE, et cetera, stating that this system has been designed with through a recognized standard. Ooh. So we've had rebates. The Township of Langley is one of the very few municipalities that do offer rebates and financial support to help us get to step code, meet step code and expand our skills. And we've had a mid-construction blower door test rebate for a very long time. We don't get a lot of uptake. We do from actually big developers who do want to kind of push the needle and learn, get ahead of the game. But it's really important. I think everybody in the room here that's operating in Langley, especially because we are at step 4. And if you're new to step 4, you're a new builder, and you're new to air tightness, you're a little bit worried. I strongly recommend you do inquire about our mid-construction blower door test rebate. So we offer up to $350 for a mid-construction blower door testing. So you want to do this. It's framing's up and it's right before drywall. You can do a mid-construction blower door test. This test is going to help you identify problems before the drywall's up. Once your drywall's up, it's a much bigger task to become airtight. And particularly now that we're at step 4 and other municipalities as well, and eventually by 2032, everybody's going to be at step 5. This is going to help you learn ahead of time such that when you're before final and you're doing your finer blower door test, and if you are failing, this can be very costly and time consuming to remedy that. So when you do it at mid-construction, you have time to fix things, and we are offering a very sizable rebate to help you learn what mistakes you're making and to address them, and eventually you can wean yourself off the rebate and won't need it. So do take advantage of this today. If you have any questions about that, email us at greenbuildings@tol.ca. And maybe some folks in the chat there, if you have taken advantage of this, say hello. Yep. Okay. Here at the township and Green Buildings, we do a ton of data analysis from your BPs, from the data that we get to understand what's going on in the building community, to help us better understand kind of what's working, what's not working, where our builders need a little bit more help or where they're excelling. And I just wanted to highlight something in particular on air tightness. On the legend here on this axis here, the y-axis, this SFD means single family dwelling, so just a regular house. This MFD is multifamily, so townhouse, row house, and that is a duplex. We've had many building permits since 2021, and I just want to highlight something here around air changes. All of this data, or effectively 99.9% of this data, is step 3. So this is all step 3 buildings that were required to meet step 3. For single-family buildings or dwellings, 31% of those single-family dwellings that were designed, construction, and meant to or required to meet step 3 came in and meeting step 4 for air changes, or they had an air change rate of 1.5. So nearly a third of builders were either just landing at an air change of 1.5, or they were talking to their trades. They were having a bit of coordinating design early in the project, or they had an air boss that was watching trades and watching staff to ensure that they're not puncturing the air barrier. And nearly a third of these people came in just landing at the air change requirement for step 4, or an air change rate of 1.5. That's very, very interesting data. However, I do want to point your attention to multifamily, where only 7% of them met that, accidentally, so to speak, met that. So what that tells us is if you are building multifamily or townhouse row house, you do want to talk to your trades, have a little bit more discussions about how do we meet those higher or smaller air change rates for step 4 and 5. Okay, for those of you who have missed any of our lectures over the last 5 years, or workshops since the last 5 years, do check out our website, our brand newish website, Green Buildings On Demand. It's an on-demand learning portal. You can watch any workshop we've had over the last 5 years at any time of the day, anywhere in the world, I suppose. And if you finish the course, you will get a certificate that is fully accredited by BC Housing, Building Officials Association BC, Canadian Certified Energy Advisors Association, and more. You can get the credit. You don't have to attend at a specific time. Do whatever you want. To date, I'd like to highlight that it's about a year and a half. We've been able to deliver over 800 learning credits or CPDs to our builders and other professionals across the province, all for free, all at your own discretion. Do check it out at tol.ca/gblearn. And we're nearing the end of our update before we get to the lectures. I wanted to take this opportunity here to share a bit of a secret with all y'all. We've been working on something, and you're going to be the very first to know in the province. Nobody, even maybe some of the consultants here on the call, nobody other than the design team of this project is aware of this. You are the absolute first, and we're giving you a bit of a heads up to hold the date for a live event. So this is following our last live event, which at the LEC, which was held 2 years ago. We had a live workshop on insulation, on envelope, how to really beef up our envelope to meet step 5, step 4, and ensure that this building is airtight and it survives for many decades. And it was sold out, and it was a great workshop, and everybody was really satisfied with that. It was really awesome. So we recognize that live workshops, in-person workshops really do go a long way. And from many months of effort, we've decided to, and if you went to that, maybe say hi in the chat. Look at all these people enjoying working together from different companies and operate on different type of buildings. It was really a great event. And this year we're back. You're the first to know here. And we're partnering with the city of Maple Ridge. We want to make this a real slam dunk and a really big event. So we partner with our friends at Maple Ridge to join forces and join efforts to put on a really awesome workshop for you all folk. So here's something you want to jot down. October 21st and 22nd of this year, you want to hold the date. You're the first to know. Hold the date for somebody from your building group or your company. We're having this event held over 2 days, one event each day. It's not a 2-day event, so to speak. It's 2 of the same day to ensure that we can capture many people. You will be the first to have access to registration if you're on the mailing list. If you're not on the mailing list, go to the link up there, tol.ca/e-news. Maybe Gene, you could tell them which newsletter to subscribe to. There's a lot of newsletter on that page. One of them is going to be called Green Buildings for Builders or something like that. Gene will put that in the chat there for you. tol.ca/e-news. Join our mailing list. And so what's this lecture going to be about? That's really what you want to know. So last year we talked about insulation, envelope. And envelope is really one of the things you want to know. We have Mark Bernhardt here today, and you can talk all about envelopes today and airtightness and how to beef up that envelope to meet step code. We talk a lot about that in all of our lectures. But what's missing? So Mark's going to tell you a lot about envelope, and Hamid talked a lot about envelope and airtightness, all that stuff. And we also talk about mechanical systems such as heat pumps. A lot of people know heat pumps, and HRVs. Probably heard about that a few years ago, and many of you use those. And all these other things. And you're like, okay, that's great. I've been recommended to use this mechanical system. But where there's a gap that we felt that builders, particularly the builders, are kind of exposed to, is once you have this mechanical system, sorry guys, my computer's going funny. There we go. Once you have this mechanical system, what do you do with it? Often it's your HVAC contractor that's doing the rest of the work here. So what do you need to know to make sure your HVAC system can, one, help you meet whatever codes you need to meet, as well as meeting the expectations of your customer. So our workshop that we're holding here in the fall is going to have a variety of topics, and I'm giving you a bit of a teaser on them. We're going to start with intro to HVAC design. We're going to talk about coordinated design and why is it really, really important to have those conversations early in design process, and how's that going to help you? The F280, CSA F280 load calculation, something that is required across the province. How do you use proper sizing to benefit your project? Equipment selection, HVAC design. Quality installation practices, performance verification, and lastly, homeowner education. So we want to bridge that gap. We talk a lot about envelopes, and that's great. We talk about mechanical systems, that's great, but we want to tell you, now that you have a mechanical system, what do you do with it? So do join our mailing list to be the first to know when our registration is going to be available, and it will be available in the next couple of weeks. And before we start our day, I just wanted to highlight it's our good pal Ajeen Surendran's birthday. Please join me in wishing Ajeen a happy birthday. Happy birthday, Ajeen. Thanks for all your hard work. And with that, I'd like to move on to the next part of our workshop today, and that's to talk about small housing. So our speaker for today is David Sisk from Small Housing BC. David is eager to collaborate with communities and partners across the province to help shape more equitable policy responses to the generational housing crisis we all face today. So please join me in welcoming David Sisk to talk about all things Bill 44, small housing, and gentle density. Off to you, David.
Thanks, Kevin. I'm just share my screen. And hopefully that is coming up for everybody. Might give me a thumbs up. Yep, all good. Sweet. Well, firstly, echoing that, happy birthday, Jean. I can't think of a better way of spending a birthday than talking about the magical world of gentle density and small scale homes. So happy birthday. And thank you for the introduction, Kevin, and thank you to the Township of Langley for inviting us here today to this Builder Forum lecture. As said, my name is David Sisk. I'm a communications specialist with small housing, and I'm joined here today with my colleague, Grant Gilron, who's our education manager. Grant's going to be in the comments, so if anyone has any questions throughout this, please feel free to drop them in and we'll kind of answer them in real time or kind of at the end of it, whatever suits people. So like we said, we're delighted to be here today to provide very much an entry-level introduction into what Bill 44 and small-scale multi-unit housing means for you as a building community, as well as the tangible emerging opportunities for builders in this space. And we're going to highlight very briefly that this is such an exciting time for small-scale builders as we share real-world insights into how you can tap into this emerging space. So sit back, grab a coffee. We're going to try and keep this nice and light. It's not going to be super technical. So and hopefully by the end of the short presentation, you'll be as hyped for small-scale gentle density as we are at small housing. Before I begin in earnest, I'd like to acknowledge that I'm joining you today from the unceded territories of the Squamish, Tsleil-Waututh, and Musqueam nations. These lands have been stewarded by Indigenous peoples since time immemorial, and I'm grateful to live and work on them. At Small Housing, our work takes place right across Canada, and we strive to carry out that work in a way that acknowledges and supports Indigenous rights, knowledge systems, and leadership. That means ensuring that the housing solutions we advance are respectful, inclusive, and grounded in equity. So very briefly, for those of you who may not know who Small Housing are, we are Canada's leading non-profit focused on advancing gentle density housing solutions. Since our foundation in 2012, we've had one very simple goal: whether you're a planner, a homeowner, a builder, or anyone involved in housing, we want to make it easier to build small-scale housing in traditionally single detached neighborhoods. We do this through a plethora of activities such as strategic advisory work, builder and homeowner education, technical support to all levels of government, and generally filling in anywhere we see where the market gaps are, whether that's through championing and supporting standardized designs, bylaw boot camps, or gentle density housing accelerators, all of which I'll touch on in more detail throughout this presentation. Overall, we're active partners with municipalities and industry groups alike all over Canada, effectively helping to translate zoning reform and policy into real-world projects. So with all that said, you've heard me use the term gentle density a couple of times now. Gentle density in essence refers to any small-scale multi-unit homes that can blend seamlessly into existing single-family neighborhoods. At Small Housing, we use the term gentle density mostly, but you might also hear it referred to as missing middle housing, or as we've seen in the BC government parlance of small-scale multi-unit housing, or SMU or SMUH, whatever. We're still trying to finalize how people are pronouncing it, but they're all interchangeable terms. Whatever the label, these buildings do share same characteristics, that they're typically ground-oriented, meaning that the residents have independent access to the units. They're typically under 600 square feet or square meters in size, and no more than 3 to 4 stories. All of these fall crucially under Part 9 of the BC building codes. That means they're built using familiar construction methods, most often wood frame, but in typically smarter, more flexible configurations. Many of these projects are built on infill lots, so they don't require major new infrastructure upgrades. And more projects that we're seeing are leveraging prefab methods to make the construction even more efficient. So again, this is a whistle-stop tour. I'll kind of go into this in more detail shortly. So yeah, building gentle density homes as well, crucially, the takeaway from this is that it's not a big leap from building traditional single family homes. The same materials, methods, and codes apply. They're just arranged differently. So if you're a builder that has experience in single family construction, you're in an excellent position already to thrive in this gentle density space. So this slide just kind of gives an example of, the kinds of homes that we're talking about. So all of these fall under the gentle density definition. So, you've laneway homes or garden suites, which are small self-contained homes built in the backyard or laneway of an existing property, often used for additional rental income or housing an extended family. Pocket neighborhoods are clusters of small homes arranged around a shared green space or courtyard designed to foster community connection. Similarly, you have co-housing models as well, which is, a group of private homes with shared common spaces like kitchens, gardens, or play areas. Again, very community driven and increasing in popularity. Often with, in small housing, we see a lot of groups of friends pooling resources together to kind of set these up. Houseplexes or multiplexes, these are kind of emerging, across the province on foot of Bill 44, which I'll touch on in a few seconds. This is typically a single building designed to look like a large house from the street, but containing multiple separate homes within. So that could be duplexes, triplexes, or fourplexes. Lock-off suites, typically these wouldn't be as common as the others in the gentle density space, but these would be flexible, self-contained secondary units within a larger home that can be locked off for independent use of the tenants. Then you have small lot homes, which are compact, detached houses built on smaller than standard lots, making super efficient use of the land. Row homes or townhouses, these are, increasingly popular across BC. These are the series of attached homes that share sidewalls and are individually owned, typically with private entrances and small yards. And finally, then secondary suites, self-contained apartments within an existing home, such as a basement or above garage unit with its own kitchen, bathroom, and entrance. So like you can see, there's a huge variety in what can be defined as small-scale multi-unit housing. And as we touch on, it's this variety that helps provide real options for homeowners and communities at a wider range of income levels than what's typically available today. And that in part is the appeal of these homes. I encourage anyone that, for anyone who wants to explore some of these further, it's just, given time constraints today, we could go into this in huge more detail. But if you go onto the Small Housing website, we have a resource called our Gentle Density Toolbox, which is like an online repository of resources. And within that, we have a whole photo gallery of these types of homes, and they also contain drawings and floor plans and sample pro forma. So check out the Small Housing website. We have all that, and this can give you way more information than what I can touch on here. Again, very simple illustration, courtesy of our friends at Rehousing over in Toronto, that gives a clearer picture of what gentle density looks like at the neighborhood level. The yellow buildings in this are representing different types of gentle density housing that we've just seen. So as you can see, it's not about redeveloping the entire block or the entire neighborhood. These homes are typically built incrementally in places where they make sense. This incremental approach allows neighborhoods to grow and evolve gradually without putting a huge strain on local resources or disrupting the character of the community. From the street level, they still look and feel a natural part of the neighborhood, but they're really helping to meet growing housing demand and adapt to the evolving needs of residents. So we'd like to share that slide just to give a flavor of it. So with that said, why does it matter in the broader scheme of things? Why are we so concerned with gentle density? Well, we've simply put it that it's a practical, elegant tool for improving housing supply, affordability, and overall community resilience. When we allow more homes, we're helping to reduce price pressure and expand the housing options for folks on a broader scope of income levels than what's currently available. It can help reduce urban sprawl by giving people the option to live in existing neighborhoods that already have the schools, parks, shops, and transits that they need for better quality of life. And you look at the alternative is pushing new housing further out, which means more car-dependent developments, longer commutes, and costly new infrastructure to service these new neighborhoods. By creating these homes, we can also help create more jobs in construction and design, something we'll touch on shortly. It can keep local businesses active, not only just in that job creation directly through home building, but also by helping to gradually increase footfall in these neighborhoods. We can kind of keep local businesses alive. And generally, we can also grow the municipal tax base without the need for major new roads or infrastructure, as I've touched on. Importantly, gentle density also supports the people who keep our communities running, in essential frontline workers, teachers, nurses, doctors, giving them more viable housing options to live in the communities in which they serve, which is super important. So in BC, the opportunity to build these types of homes faster and easier has never been greater, owing to the introduction of Bill 44, which many of you on the call will have heard about. But, just to cover our bases, we'll give you a quick whistle-stop tour of it today. So Bill 44 marks a real major shift in how housing is planned and delivered across British Columbia. It was introduced in the fall of 2023 and applies to municipalities with more than 5,000 residents and effectively set a new baseline for density in residential neighborhoods. In practice, that means that most single detached lots across the province can now allow up to 4 homes on that lot and up to 6 if the lot is near a transit hub. This fundamentally overrides traditional zoning rules that restricted development to just 1 unit per lot, rules that have long constrained housing supply. With this legislation, the province is aiming to create more diverse and connected neighbourhoods by allowing a wider range of housing types and densities. And the province believes that this can deliver about 130,000 new units over the next decade. A figure that some people say might be, lowballing it. If more measures come in place, we definitely as Small Housing see huge potential in the space. And again, we can talk about that shortly. Of interest to people on the call, to support this, the province did release a provincial policy manual that included recommended site standards and practical guidance to help municipalities implement the changes. For anyone interested in learning more about the back end of Bill 44, I'd encourage you to check it out. And again, you can find that on the Small Housing website. But again, very important to note that while Bill 44 mandates a minimum number of units per lot, local governments still control the bylaws that shape how the legislation is applied. So that means that the rules aren't uniform across the province. For example, one community might allow a triplex plus a laneway home on a lot, while another might not permit 2 duplexes on the same lot, even though they're both 4 units in total. So if you remember that earlier slide that I showed you with all the different housing types, it's not always as simple as, pick and mix between those models and just planting them on a lot. Each community will have its own approach and its own bylaws. So very critical to consult your local planning department before you engage in any of these projects. And again, I'll kind of talk more about the project management side of things in a short while. Cool. So now we get on to some of the fun stuff, some of the research that we've conducted that I think would be of interest to folks in the call. So support for gentle density is stronger than you might expect, and it's coming from all sides. We recently conducted research with Leger polling. We polled over 1,000 people across British Columbia and right across the province. And we found that over 80% of them said they support gentle density as a housing solution. And what we kind of always said with builders is that it's important to recognize that. So when you're building gentle density, you're actually not pushing against public opinion, which sometimes is the narrative that emerges due to a bit of a vocal minority that you might see in the media or in politics. Our research shows that this is actually the kind of homes that people are wanting and needing. And, there's a whole, as I said, it comes right across the divide. a lot of people that we deal with that are looking for these types of homes might be seniors and aging parents that are looking to downsize but don't want to leave the neighborhoods they know, and they're close to their families and friends that they rely on. Others might be young families, first-time buyers who are just searching for homes they can actually afford, which again are close to the existing amenities that are already in existence. Gentle density opens up these opportunities a lot more than what's currently available on the market, just traditional single-family lots. Essential frontline workers, as I said, they're another big audience in this. Homeowners planning for the future are also exploring gentle density as a way to add value to their property, welcome extended family members onto their lot while still keeping the independence, and also just to generate additional revenue. We're often seeing that people are building these secondary suites at their back lots and then Airbnb them for tourists. Again, just that extra revenue stream, or they're leasing them to students, what have you. The point being that there's a whole host of different actors here who really want these homes built, and that's a huge market there. And the other piece of what might be of interest to people on the call is that we're also seeing a lot of interest in multi-generational families. We see that typically a lot of urban centres across BC, where there's quite a typical family model within a home. And gentle density, again, allows them to stay connected. They're still in the same lot, but with greater independence. So again, that's just a flavour of some of the types of people who are building these types of homes.
David,
sorry, go ahead.
We have a question in the chat here, and kind of for David and Krista. Do you want to take questions throughout, or do you want to save them all to the end?
I might save them till the end, because I think they might get covered. And I'll fly through them. And
sounds good.
Grant is on the call as well, so if he can answer anything in real time, we'll. But we might pool them at the end, and I'm very happy to reach out to people then, and if that's okay.
Sounds good.
Thanks. So yeah, in that same piece of Leisure research that we carried out, we found that 42% of homeowners in BC would consider adding a secondary suite or extra unit to their property if the process were simpler and faster. So again, from a builder's perspective, that's a huge opportunity. These are people who own their land and are really ready to build, but they're stuck. So we've explored what's holding them back, and what we can see that is, even though Bill 44 has legalized these types of homes, the reality on the ground is still playing catch up. In many municipalities, the permitting process can be quite cumbersome and slower than we need it to be. Homeowners, like I said, are facing long waiting times for approvals. They might find it unclear on what's actually allowed in their community. And we've heard from industry and residents alike that they often get bounced between departments or consultants, unsure of how to navigate the systems. There's also a real lack of consistent information, with many people not even knowing where to start. So this is where we can see how builders can come in potentially. Homeowners need experienced partners who understand these types of projects, who can explain the steps clearly, design to local conditions, and shepherd the build through approvals and delivery. And if you can help provide that clarity and guidance, you're meeting a huge market demand potentially, and helping to turn this housing potential into housing reality. And of course, small housing can kind of support with that work as well, as we'll kind of allude to later. So with all that said, what does that mean for you as a small scale builder? What are the opportunities for builders in this space? Well, as we've recognized, there's several advantages already at your disposal. Number one, you already have the skills. Thinking about building something like a fourplex might sound like a leap, but if you're already building single family homes, you're more than halfway there, we think. The tools, the trades, materials, and building codes are all the same. So really, gentle density is just a reconfiguration, not an overall reinvention of the work that you're already doing. Number two, these neighborhoods. You're not parachuting into unfamiliar territory. The lots. You can bring yourself up to speed quicker on the zoning requirements. You've worked with local trades and have existing relationships there. And that local insight gives you a serious head start when it comes to the siting, the design, and the community fit of these projects. And finally, number three, you're not competing with the big developers. Simply put, big developers aren't chasing these projects. The margins on these small scale multi-unit homes are too tight for their project models, especially with high interest rates and high upfront costs. So this leaves room for smaller, agile builders who can operate efficiently and make these projects work. And as I'll show in a few minutes, tighter margins doesn't mean that there are no profits to be made. As we'll see, you can often deliver the same profit margins as a single family home, but actually with more risk, or with less risk, sorry. So with that, we have often argued, with small housing, that building gentle density isn't just a good policy, it can also be smart business. It helps spread the risk and can boost stability. So, for example, building a single family home puts all your eggs in one basket, so to speak. If the market cools, you're kind of left stuck, and we've seen this happen. But with a fourplex, again, for example, you have 4 potential income streams or sales opportunities that can help reduce the risk and give you more flexibility with cash flow. It can help improve project economics. So you're delivering 3 to 8 times potentially more housing on the same lot compared to single detached homes. Shared walls, infrastructure, foundations can all lower your per unit construction costs. And we've seen projects achieve average builds costs as low as about $250 per square foot, which can be highly competitive, especially when spread across multiple units. It's kind of, despite what I've said earlier, we are starting to see approvals get faster. It's all moving in the right direction. And while there's still room for improvement, they are gradually, municipalities are gradually catching up with the zoning changes. Some are exploring offering streamlined permitting for gentle density projects, especially if they're using the standardized designs, whether from the province or the feds, which means less time waiting and more time building. And alluding to that, the policy support for gentle density is growing. We've seen the federal government want these homes built, the municipal and the provincial governments want these homes built. So there is support there to try and get these built. So as I said, the standardized designs are now available for consideration. We've seen that come out from both the federal government and the government of BC. And these are a series of free standardized designs to help facilitate the development of these gentle density homes. They're, versatile design. They use a building block approach that allows for customization. You can mix and match elements to add features like garages or additional bedrooms and stack up to 3 stories high. So all the designs comply with the 2024 BC Building Code and can be tailored to fit different lot sizes and site conditions. So they're available for free download. And like we always say, if you are looking at these, always then consult with your local planning department to see, how they're interpreting them and what they're allowing in your community. Elsewhere for policy support, you do have the Housing Accelerator Fund is providing federal dollars to encourage missing middle housing. And if you're building in a city that's receiving this sort of support, your permitting process could be faster and more affordable. So again, where you're operating, do check in with your council to see if they are receiving this funding. That could help a lot. And also we've seen recently the province allowing, development cost charges to be paid over time. So just 25% upfront with the balance due at occupancy or within 4 years. So combined with expanded access to the surety bonds, which were also announced, this gives the potential for builders for more financial breathing room. So again, consult with your local planning department and see what's out there for you. Cool. So this is kind of like something that we just throw in just to kind of visualize it a bit more. I've been kind of talking a lot for the last, 20 minutes or so. So this is just more kind of like a bit of a thought piece that we do. So on screen, you'll see a very simple table that compares a single family home versus a fourplex project. This is an imagined project that we use as a thought exercise, but the numbers that we have on screen are drawn from what we're seeing on the ground. So at a glance, the fourplex has a higher build cost than the single family home. But if you dig into the details, you'll see that the fourplex produces a gross profit of about $500,000 compared to just $240,000 for the single detached home. So both projects yielding a profit margin of 21%. So while both have the same profit margin, but this is with each unit of fourplex priced at $575,000, which people on the call will be we'll see it's well below the current average price for a fourplex unit in BC. So from a builder's perspective, this hopefully should excite you. That shows that the profit potential is even can be higher again. If those same units were sold at say $750,000 each, which is much more aligned with today's market, the gross profit would jump to 1.2 million potentially. And again, all while staying on the same single family lot. We like to think of it as a reminder that smart builders don't just look at the build costs, they focus on the whole project, the total site return, and how many doors that lot can support. Some of these savings are driven by efficiency, as I said, shared walls means lower exterior material costs and faster build timelines. There's the shared infrastructure can create real savings per unit. And when you're pricing well-built homes at a more attainable level than the single-family market, you're tapping into a much broader pool of buyers and renters, which means faster sales or lease-up and lower holding risk. In short, gentle density doesn't just work financially, it can often outperform single-family from a profitability, efficiency, and demand standpoint. So again, compelling opportunities for builders interested in this to explore further. And here's a stat that we pulled from SmallWorks, who are a small-scale developer based out of BC. They say that if just 1% of BC's single-family lots were mobilised under Bill 44's policies, think fourplexes again, it would represent 21.7 billion in property turnover annually. And they get this figure from, BC assessment numbers show that the total value of residential property in BC is around 2.17 trillion. And if just 1% of that was turned over each year, you would get that figure. So this doesn't include, they say, the actual dollars spent to build those homes, things like construction materials, labor, permitting, professional services, which would multiply the economic impact even further. So while the stat on screen reflects turnover value based on things like equity and mortgage data, it hints at an even larger economic opportunity if we were to get serious about enabling these types of projects. So in short, if we make it easier for even a small fraction of homeowners to build, the ripple effects could be enormous for housing supply, for jobs, and the broader economy. Yep, there's again just some kind of tips and tricks that we often share. Again, it can seem daunting when you're kind of you're beginning one of these gentle density projects. What we hope to kind of capture is that, listen, it shouldn't be. It's very much the same methodologies and the same kind of code you've been doing with single family homes. With that said, every project comes with risks, but there's proactive ways that we can kind of get them on track. And some of the tips that we often say, the most simplest things is, as I've said, alluded to on this call, don't assume zoning means automatic approval. Even if your project fits within the new rules, there are often still important details that can trip you up if you're not careful. Meet with planners early to make sure you fully understand site-specific requirements like setbacks, parking, what have you. If your municipality offers pre-approved or standardized designs, as I said, explore those options. They can save you time and reduce back and forth consultations during the permitting. Second, it seems common sense, but again, as I say, budget properly, budget properly for the soft costs and include a contingency fund. It's easy to focus on the hard construction costs and underestimate the other expenses that add up quickly, whether that's design fees, permitting costs, consultants, if you need surveys. So be realistic about these numbers from the outset and always include that kind of emergency fund so unexpected issues don't derail your project. Third, and again, this is something that, again, seems common sense, but engage your neighbors early and openly. A lot of opposition can be diffused with just good communication. Take the time to explain what you're building, why it matters, and how it fits into the character of the neighborhood. Using visuals like renderings or streetscape images can go a long way in helping people see the benefits and just generally ease concerns about change. So show, don't just tell. And it's just a great example. If you go onto YouTube, many people on the call will be aware of Kathleen Higgins out in Delta. She's done this short documentary about her fourplex that she's developed in Delta that really captures the work that she did to kind of explain to her neighbors how it worked. So yeah, do check that out. It's a great example of just, they had an example of, she just went around to her neighbors and said, hey, I'm developing my single family home into a fourplex. My kids are going to move in. And you can see the neighbors like, well, I've seen those kids grow up. And it just added a human element to it. She wasn't doing it for profit. She was just doing it to supply homes to her family. So check it out. Well worthwhile. And finally, get your full team involved as early as possible. So echoing my second point, your designer, permit consultant, other key professionals should be looped in at the concept stage, not brought in halfway through. Their early input can really help you sort out challenges before they become expensive challenges, help you keep your project moving. So penultimate slide before I pass over to my colleague Grant, who will talk about some upcoming stuff that we're working on. If I was to summarize and give you guys, the builders on the call here today, the 3 key takeaways, I'd again echo that gentle density is a major opportunity for small scale builders. You have the skills, you have the tools and local knowledge needed to deliver gentle density housing. Again, using familiar construction methods, and it all fits within Part 9 of the BC Building Code. These projects are highly viable because big developers are not competing in this space, leaving room for smaller, agile builders to lead. Secondly, we are seeing strong policy and market forces that are driving this demand. Bill 44 has unlocked new rights of single-family lots across BC, and this is signaling strong government support for gentle density projects. Public support is high, as we've seen, over 80% of British Columbians backing this. And this combination of policy changes and market interest creates a significant pipeline of projects ready to be delivered. And finally, the financial business case is compelling. We've only had a short time to speak to it today. We can go into it in way more detail with some of the other pieces that we offer at small housing. But as I said, gentle density can spread the risk, improve profitability, and overall better utilize the land. multi-unit projects and single lots deliver more homes, lower per unit costs, and access to a broader buyer-renter pool. So builders can benefit from streamlined permitting, potentially, new incentives and updated rules like phased DCC payments, other emerging policies like, strata typing of laneway homes, which we can talk about in the Q&A. But all of this is improving project economics and making these developments more attractive. So all in all, there's a huge potential here for advantage of first movers, and that these costs will only likely go down if we can build a bit of momentum. So with that, I'll pass it over to Grant to talk about some upcoming training sessions that we've got going on.
Thanks, David. Yeah, that was a great overview of everything. And I just want to plug our tour for upskilling our builders around BC. So this would be a deeper dive into what David's just been providing here in this quick summary. So this is a course where it's 4 to 6 hours. It will be CPD accredited. So you'll be getting some credits if that's something you need, designed to help the small single family home builders become developers of these types of homes. And so the topics include very much what David was talking about. So an overview of gentle density, a bit of a deeper dive into some of the topics, talking about the business case side of things, creating the business case and showing how there's the financial aspect of it and the benefits of that. And then for each municipality, we're also going to get into the specifics around the zoning and regulations. We'll look at how all the examples of different designs to help with, matching the existing neighborhoods and, maintaining the community charm of the different areas. We'll also dive into a little bit of the building science. This is kind of what Mark's going to be talking about following up, but as far as the, the actual aspects of airtightness and efficiencies for mechanical operations, that kind of thing. And finalizing with financial planning around that whole aspect of the project, and then project management as well. So we also have some funding based on from the BC government, the BC Workforce Innovation Program, to keep some of the costs low. So it's very minimal cost. It's essentially close to a free training session, not quite free, but essentially allowing you to dig deeper into all these topics. And we'll be touring around the province. I've already started booking some sessions. We've got one in Abbotsford for October 23rd. And have reached out to many different municipalities around BC, and we'll be promoting this content and basically helping builders like yourselves upskill around this approach of gentle density. So that's me. I'm just going to pass it back to David. I just thought I'd plug that in case there's interest, and stay tuned for notifications on this program. So thanks.
Super. Thanks, Grant. And yeah, like I said, there's been a real whistle-stop tour of everything from gentle density. So the workshops that Grant is hosting goes into, it's a deep dive effectively into everything we've talked about today. So yeah, just all final thing for me is just like, we love to stay in touch. If you have any questions that you want more information on, or about any of the resources that small housing do, please just reach out to us. All of our contact details are on screen. As I'm around for the next hour as well, I'm super excited to hear Mark's presentation. I think we get a lot of value out of it. But yeah, we'll be answering, myself and Grant will be around to answer questions in the chat. And yeah, thanks again to Kevin and the team at Langley for inviting us out today. It's been great to engage with people and hear what people are saying on the ground. And yeah, have a great day.
Thanks, David, and thanks, Grant. That was a great introduction to small housing. I think we'll go through a few questions before we get to Mark. I also acknowledge that a number of these questions have been answered already in the chat, but not everybody's either kind of looking or at the chat or has access. So maybe I'll have Grant, David, and Krista kind of on standby to answer some of these verbally. So we'll start here with a good question. And I think this is for Krista. The question is, will the number of units allowed depend on zoning?
Yeah, so it depends on a lot of things. So it's not specific to zoning. There's other eligibility considerations, like whether the lot's within the urban containment boundary, for example. So we have a lot of lots in the township that are not. They're in ALR land, so those would not be eligible. And then servicing. So you need to have both a water and sewer connection. So those are kind of the two bigger eligibility requirements that can be a bit tougher to meet in the township of Langley, but we do have some zones that are exempt like the some of the SR zones, I think it might be SR2, is exempt because the minimum lot size of that zone is larger than an acre, and that was one of the provisions that the province had for exemption from SMU. So those zones are not permitted to have SMU, but many of the other ones are that are within the urban containment boundary and have servicing. So it's best to reach out to planning staff at cdinfo@tol.ca to confirm for your specific lot that you're looking at.
Thanks, Krista. And Krista had as well put a link to our frequently asked questions page on SMU. So do take a look there in the chat, and we'll also include it in a follow-up email. Ooh, this is a good question, K-Wall, and I'm really interested in this as well. So let's just say that any of us build this fourplex. Now what? So he asked, can we sell these fourplex to 4 different buyers or just one? How does that work? And I don't know who's going to answer this. I think it's kind of half Krista, half Small Housing. I know nothing about this. How does that work?
I can speak more generally. Again, it depends on some municipalities do allow strata titling, some don't. Again, case by case basis. I know, for example, I believe Burnaby allows it, that they do allow strata titling now on foot of Bill 44, and that they cited that they recognized it was to make the tenureship flexibility is actually more appealing for buyers. That it's very difficult if you are having to go under one ownership, and that if it's the one person owning all 4, that even if that's a family sharing those, if it's all under one line of credit, that person's credit rating is tied to everyone else. So it means that we've seen examples where this has tried to happen, that a father and his adult kids will all be living in the kind of townhouses, but it's all under his name, and if the kids need to get a car loan, that he needs to sign off on it, and suddenly just becomes very inflexible. So all that to say, it does depend. Some municipalities have introduced strata titling, and that allows for individual ownership of lots. Some are still exploring it because, again, as I said, a lot of municipalities are just catching up to Bill 44. So I'm happy to kind of share. We have some resources online that I can share with people to kind of give a bit of an explanation as to which municipalities are leading on this front. So I can stick it into the chat and follow up with people.
David, Krista, you have any comments?
We left it pretty open. So ownership is permitted and stratification is permitted. It's just really just up to you.
Okay, thank you. And maybe I think this is for David and Grant. Maybe you could also put a link, if it's not in that link that you're already going to share, on what is stratification and how do you do it. If I can build a home, I can build a 4-plex or 6-plex or whatever. I might not be exactly exposed to the matters of stratification and how to do that. So maybe you can give some resources there in the chat and send to us, and we'll put that in our follow-up email as well for anybody who's really thinking about how to make that switch from single family to multiplex. Okay. David makes a comment. It's a good one. I love the profit speculation, but it does not take into account the land value. Unfortunately, it's not really a question, it's a comment, but acknowledged. Oh, and Ken makes a good comment, and Krista commented on that as well. Don't forget to check your servicing. What local governments offer a pre-application process for review proposals before spending too much on design. And absolutely, at the Township of Langley, do come for a pre-app meeting. Come and chat with us, and if that's something you're thinking about, come and talk. Come to the front desk and talk with us, or send an email to know more about what you can build. Tony, that's a really good question, comment, and I think it's going to be from Mark, and Mark can maybe talk about it later. And he notes, through experience, I found that single-family builders have problems in constructing required fire separations between units. I think I'll stop with the questions there so we can get started with Mark's workshop. If we have time, we'll get to the rest of those questions. And if we don't have time, folks, we will we will have all of those answers in a follow-up document, as we always do. And right before Mark starts on his workshop, I'd like to introduce him. So this is Mark Bernhardt, or Bernhardt Contracting. Mark is the president of Bernhardt Contracting and the COO of Energy Code Solutions. He is an expert, a demonstrated expert, and probably 90% of you on this call, if not all of you, know him. He's an expert in high-performance home retrofits and beyond, including developing a software that supports data-driven decision-making. He sits on several provincial code committees and as a AIBC past president, spends much of his time helping other builders gear up for step code and higher performance buildings. So with that, I'll pass it on to Mark to talk about step code and small buildings.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me back. Always good to be hanging out with folks from city of or the township of Langley. Always get that wrong. And one of these days you got to formalize be a city or something like that. Go in with the big guns there. Yeah, like I say, thanks for having me here to talk about small scale buildings as it relates to step code. And I will start by answering that one question there about the fire barriers and such. I think it's reasonable. It's a reasonable comment because it is something different that you might see from like single family house to multifamily. However, I'd challenge that a little bit because I mean, at least I haven't seen a house that's anywhere near affordable built in BC that didn't at least have a legal secondary suite in it these days. I mean, you get the odd mansion or whatever, but then you're in a whole different scale of things, and I'm not here to talk about mansions. So you're always going to be building some sort of fire barrier within most of the housing that's built within BC. And so if builders aren't figuring that out, they're in trouble. I've seen builders screw up any number of things. So I'm not here to, I'm not surprised by the comment at all. I will say on fire barriers, though, the way I learned how to do fire barriers is I failed one of my first fire inspections ever, now almost 20 years ago. And the inspector at the time told me to go down to the Hilti store where they have the catalog with pictures in it. And there's like a picture of every different situation and instructions on how to do that. So I just went and picked that up, followed the instructions, and I have not failed a fire barrier since. So pretty easy to do, pretty easy to figure that out. But we're here to talk about codes and such. And I'm just going to rearrange my windows a little bit here so I can see a few different things and I can see the chat at the same time. I'm not running off a script here, so feel free to do questions and whatever. I'll try and watch out for them as we go here. But to start things off here, we're really talking about a shift in how we do codes in Canada, right? You'll notice if you're watching codes, if you're that kind of nerd, that most of the codes are going to a performance-based sort of setup rather than a prescriptive setup. So back in the day, all the codes said, well, you must have 3 nails and your stud spacing must be exactly this. But really what we're trying to do is have a wall that stands up straight and is strong enough to hold up the roof. And so that is, really where we're going with codes in general, but in particular with the energy codes. It's very difficult to do a real, or get results out of a prescriptive energy code, right? Because we can add a ton of insulation to a wall, but that may or may not be productive depending on the type of building or, the design of the building. So all our codes are going sort of in this general direction to have a goal rather than a prescriptive path for how you get there. Now, there is a prescriptive path within the BC Energy Step Code. Langley has not adopted that pathway. Most municipalities have not adopted that pathway, and that's for good reason. The R values required in Langley, if you went that prescriptive pathway, are quite frankly ridiculous, and it's way more cost effective to go the performance pathway. So, nobody in the right mind would want to go that pathway. I keep hearing rumors of owner builders out in the, in the sticks of the Kootenays and stuff doing it. But I can't imagine why. It's probably mostly that they just don't understand that the performance pathway is much simpler. So, if we're looking at these houses, well, and our goal is to be, environmental, as they say, or deal with climate change, why not just add a bunch of solar panels to a house, right? Well, the main reason for that is it doesn't really deal with a lot of the core issues that we face when we're talking about climate change and resiliency within housing, right? Because a tent could be net zero if it had enough solar panels. But you take a well-designed house, something like an igloo, and now you only need a few solar panels, or one or two, right? It doesn't deal with the peak load issue. Because for us to deal with this problem as a society, we need to deal with our peak load. Now, BC Hydro has a ton of power. They've got lots, and yes, they do import some, but they do it because they're importing it when it's cheap and selling it back to like California when they can double the price. It's really good business. It's one of the reasons that our power rates are so low. So we're not running out of power. There's lots there. But for going forward, it is a lot easier for our society to supply power if we deal with our peak load issue. And the peak load issue is, well, you have operation of your house, right? You're going up and down throughout the day with loads, and we hit a cold snap and we're going to peak way up, or we hit a heat wave and it's going to peak way up in our energy use. A high performance house will have a much lower peak. And that's the reason why our codes are focused on an envelope first approach, right? We want to insulate the house, we want to design it well, so that our peak loads are dropping. And that makes everything else much more practical. All the electrification, all that sort of stuff, right? And you can imagine if we had a peak load that looked like this, right? We have to transmit and generate, that 971 gigawatts versus only 371 gigawatts, right? Like it's a vast difference in how we move power around the province. So back to the step code now, and now that we know, kind of why we're doing it and such. The process of it, for those that, maybe new to the industry, have never done it before, basically what's going to happen in the real quick Cole's notes here is the builder's going to send a set of plans to the energy advisor. Energy advisor is going to do an energy model on that, just a bunch of math. The energy advisor is going to give you back a permit form. It's a standard provincial permit form. That's going to go to the city with your permit package, and hopefully everything's all good there. Sometime mid-construction, ideally, you're going to bring that energy advisor back to do a mid-construction test, usually before drywall goes on, to make sure that you're going to hit the targets. Now, that test isn't required, just a really good idea, because it's a lot easier to fix things at that stage than it is at final. At final, that energy advisor is going to come and do the official test and give you a report, hopefully saying you passed and it's all good to go. That report, here's an example of one. Is something that builders really want to be paying attention to. This is just the first 2 pages. The third page is really for the city, so builders need to pay attention to the first two. First of all, page number 1 has all the information on it that, you're looking at the right project. Page number 2 is really important for those builders because it shows what I've energy modeled your house at. So things like windows, for example, what is the U value of that window? What is the solar heat gain of that window? You should be giving this form to your trades and to your suppliers. Like, your window supplier needs to know what we've energy modeled. And so really important information for all the trades. And it's important that that match what you're intending to build, because if you're intending to build something less than what is shown on this form, you're in trouble. Could end up failing. And we've had that happen before, and it's expensive. The code itself, there are 3 main categories of the code here that we have to hit. And I'm not going to get into the nitty-gritty of the numbers here. That's for your energy advisor to work out. But what we need to know is that there are 3 main categories that we have to hit. First is the air leakage. We've talked about that a bit already today. Mechanical systems and equipment. This is really total energy. If you work in the Part 3 world, they do call it total energy. We eliminate base loads in Part 9, so it's not quite total energy. But if you think about it that way, that's fine. That's sort of the same idea. And the TEDI. The TEDI is basically how hard your furnace has to work to keep this house warm. So we have to hit each of those, something in each of those categories to make this work. And that then, brings us to whatever step code level. It's companion code, right? Now we've brought the energy load of the building down, and now all the electrification stuff becomes practical, or the decarbonizing of our energy becomes practical. So it has a companion code, the 0 carbon step code, and I've got that 0 in quotes there because it's actually not 0. That's just greenwashing, and there's no real such thing as 0. But this also has 3 categories to choose from, right? It's a total GHG per year, it's a GHG per meter squared with a max cap, and a prescriptive option, which is silly and nobody should do. But the 2 other options, one favors large houses and one favors small houses. So it sort of covers the range of what we'd want to do there. The unfortunate thing with this code is it is getting a lot of bad press, and particularly a lot of bad misinformation right now. And we're seeing that having an effect at council chambers where people are coming and doing a lot of protesting. And it's really unfortunate because this code and the energy code was actually designed by builders for builders to achieve, this resiliency goal. It's not just something that the government just cooked up and said, oh, y'all are doing this now. It is actually designed by industry with a lot of input for that. And so for that reason, it's actually not particularly difficult to hit, but it does still achieve the goal. And the reason I think we're getting a lot of pushback is because the brochure says this. This is the sort of the prescriptive pathway. And it says, well, you're going to start by decarbonizing your heating system. Okay, maybe that's not a big deal. Then you're going to decarbonize your heating and your hot water. And then we're going to decarbonize all systems. And what they mean by all systems is basically none of them. So I can see how that might be confusing to folks. And this is really what I think has generated a lot of pushback. So let's look at a house, what is included and what is not. And Kevin already sort of alluded to this, but let's just do a little bit more detail on this. Right, we're going to count, if we're looking at GHG emissions, we're going to count your principal heating system. That's the main thing that, heats the house. So if that's a gas furnace, that's going to have a lot of emissions associated with it. Heat pump, not so much. We're going to count a supplementary heating system. Now, this is a heating system that is designed to come on and help the main system out if the main system can't keep up or do the entire energy load. Now that says we're sort of counting that because if you've got a situation, as you would in Langley, where you've got a heat pump with a gas furnace there as a supplementary system, even the worst heat pump you can buy these days is going to be doing the vast majority of the heating, unless it's set wrong or installed wrong. And so for that reason, on my energy model is going to say, well, I'm going to use this much more efficient system, and I'm only going to turn on that less efficient system in very extreme circumstances. And so there's going to be hardly any GHGs associated with that. The hot water tank is counted, and this is probably the biggest change we're seeing in industry is that we're going from a lot of people using like a gas boiler to an electric tank. And now, in my experience, that's vastly cheaper, so not necessarily a problem. If you have somebody with a high hot water load, get them 2 tanks and it's still cheaper. In small housing, that gets to be a space issue, but there's lots of relatively easy solutions there as well. Redundant and backup systems not counted. Your gas fireplace not counted at all. Generators not counted. So all of that totally fine. Equipment and appliances. Now, this is where the prescriptive really gets more restrictive than all the others. Is that the only equipment and appliances that are counted are cooking and laundry, and those are only counted in the prescriptive option. Now, all of you are probably energy modeling anyways, so we don't care about the prescriptive option, but that's why you'll hear maybe people get confused about whether cooking is or is not counted. It is only counted in the prescriptive option, and nobody in the right mind should be using that, so it's all good. And let's look at an example house here. Now, average Langley house here, pretty typical what you might see down the block. I'm not sure why they're landing their helicopter in the pool, but, whatever. And obviously there's been a few years of climate change going on here with the palm trees. But this house here, so it has a heat pump as the main system, starting off pretty good there, gas supplementary heating. I don't know why they'd want that in Langley, but it's there, that's fine. They can do that. Electric hot water, house this size, we're probably going to have a few different tanks, but also acceptable for this code. We have some redundant and backup systems. We've got a diesel generator. Got to keep the game on when the power goes out. Got a gas fireplace in every room, including the walk-in closet, because only a peasant would change in a room that doesn't have a fireplace. So obviously, we do have some gas cooking, some gas laundry. Other systems, we've got a gas heated driveway, gas barbecue, gas heated pool, patio heaters, heated garage, tiki torches, and a sauna. All running on gas. Now, you could take a moment to think to yourself, now, what would this be? What level of the carbon step code would this be? And if you said top level, best you can do, you'd be correct. This is an EL4 house, even with all that gas usage. So if you hear anybody talking about gas ban, wrong. And now we've heard this from both sides of the debate too, right? You got your average tree hugger activist type saying we should ban gas, and this is a gas ban, we want it. And you've got the people on the other side saying we don't want the gas ban, you can't ban gas. Neither of them are correct. It's actually kind of somewhere in the middle. And for my friends in the tree hugger Greenpeace type community, you can feel good that we're taking care of the biggest loads, right? The biggest loads are taken care of. Baby steps will get there eventually. For those of you builders out there that don't want to fight with your client about cooking, you can feel good. You're okay. You've got it. And the tiki torches and whatever, all that's not counted. So we're not even looking at that. So, this house with the helicopter and the pool is an EL4 house. So moving on to how we get there and how we get there a little bit more cost effectively, right? Designing for step code is really important. And this is where I really want to focus on those kind of smaller missing middle type houses. The key to success in step code is not adding more insulation. It's not spending more money. It's actually spending less money, making a cheaper house. So what I mean by that is less surface area. If you have less surface area, less heat has the opportunity to leak out. So here's a bad example. This house came across my desk a couple of days ago. It's a single level and it's got a very high surface area. If we took this house and we stacked up these two wings on top of each other, vastly different surface area. Or we took them and we put them, together somehow, vastly different amount of surface area. And this house really struggled to get to step 3, let alone higher steps, because it is so spread out. It's a relatively small house. It's only about 1,500 square feet. And it's got all this surface area, really struggled to get there. This is an example of somebody who spent a lot more money than they needed to, and they could have easily changed their design. The second key piece is think about how many windows do you actually need and where do you need them? Here's an example, again, from a recent one of our files here. This house, we might call a solar cooker as well, because this is the south side we're looking at here. It's got way too many windows on the south side. This is going to be a very, very hot house. Now, they might have a view and they might tell me to go away and we're just going to air condition this, which I guess you can do. But, again, we've got a bit of an eccentric shape here in the house where you can see different wings poking off there, single level, so very high surface area combined with a ridiculous amount of windows facing in directions that are not helpful. And very high cooling load on this house. Designs like this are just not going to be, giving you an affordable design. I'm going to contrast that to this house here. Now, admittedly, this one is not going to win any design competitions, but you change the siding up, you throw a deck on the front, maybe you could spruce this thing up pretty well, and it would be quite an attractive house. This house was actually built in the Qualicum area, and it's a much simpler shape, right? It does have some corners. It's not a full box, but it's a much simpler shape. And this house with very, very cheap construction, like the worst you're legally allowed to do, kind of a little bit below respectable, is step 4, without breaking a sweat. So this house does have a legal secondary suite in it. So it is a missing middle type of housing that we're looking at the floor plan of the upper floor here and the suites on the lower floor. So, effectively a duplex kind of situation. Step 4 with the worst construction any respectable builder could think they would do. With just adding R22 in the walls and obviously meeting the air leakage requirement as well, this house is step 5. So that's still really crummy windows. It's still basically, just standard insulation everywhere. This house is step 5 with just slightly better walls and air tightness. That's it. This is a very cheap house to get to step 5. Incidentally, this house was also designed not to need a structural engineer. So it's done under the new seismic codes where we can do the lateral load calculations. And so right there, we've saved an engineer and we can get to step 5 with hardly spending any money at all. How did they do it? Well, this is a builder that we've worked with for quite a while, and they do it through integrated design. And now integrated design has been a key part of our own development company's process for a long time. We did it mostly because we knew we didn't know what we were doing and we had to go and ask for expertise. And then that expertise would talk to us in all sorts of fancy language that we didn't know what it was. And so we'd have to get everybody that knew that language in the same room to hear that, go around. And what we were doing is collecting people into the same room to talk to each other. And that's integrated design. And so what we're doing is we're inviting our trades early in with the designer for pre-project meetings. What is the goal? What are we trying to achieve? The plumber is going to say, well, avoid doing this because we had this problem down the street here, or whatever, things like that. We're going to have that discussion. We're getting their opinions, not just their prices, right? Typically, we hire people that we think are qualified. And if we think they're qualified, we respect their opinion, right? I'm not going out to lowest tender and just hiring, whatever Yahoo, and people who are going to give me all sorts of funny advice. We hire them because they're good. And that saves us piles and piles of money in the end product. And it doesn't need to be a formal or fancy process, right? Most of the time we do this, it's just a meeting we're getting together. Often it's online. We did one in Invermere not long ago with 10 retrofits. And our goal was to get through all 10 retrofits in a morning. It was one builder doing all these 10 retrofits. And we had the electrician, the HVAC person, the plumber there, and then the builder, and then us as energy advisor was there. And we did get through all 10 of them. We probably took almost $1 million out of budgets for these 10 retrofits within that meeting, and just things we didn't need, things that were overlapping, things that were optimized. Very, very effective process. Get together with your trades, share the information. Doesn't need to be fancy. You'll see guidebooks and things for integrated design being really thick, and it sounds like a really fancy process. We'll see those fancier processes on bigger Part 3 projects. But certainly for the smaller Part 9, it's not necessary. And this is really what we're trying to do, right? If we have a standard design process, we have, you're a little bit messy up at the start, and then you get into construction and you have one change, and you're kind of all over the place with the construction, making changes and doing weird things. Inevitably, your timeline goes a little longer than maybe it should, versus an integrated design project where all of our messiness stays in pre-construction. And then after that, it's very smooth. And this is typically how our projects look when we build them. We build our developments with 0 change orders is the goal. We want 0 changes in construction. I want everything, including the grout color, picked before I put a shovel in the ground. And then I just want to push play and it all rolls out. So much easier for us. And the key here, the reason that we're not spending a ton of extra money to do this is because changes in construction are exceptionally expensive. Changes in design are very cheap. So how does this integrate with step code? Well, we get simple details like this if we're integrating our design early on, right? So things like party walls in particularly in the missing middle world, they tend to be a problem, right? We need simple details that all the trades know and understand. And so, these aren't like architectural details. These are ones that I've sketched out and drawn and handed to a trade and said, what about this? And they said, yeah, we can totally build that. And then we achieve a high level of airtightness. And in particular problem areas like this, like garages, we're seeing a lot of failure in missing middle housing in garages, particularly where it's a townhouse and that garage nests in at the basement and you've got kind of a stairwell running up. There's a whole lot of mechanical that is running through the ceiling of that garage, poking all kinds of holes in your air barrier. If you're trying to air barrier above that, it's destined for failure. It's not going to work out very well. Or you're going to send some poor first-year apprentice carpenter around there with bags of caulking, and it's just, they're going to hate their life, and it's still not going to work. So what we're recommending is Tyvek the inside of your garage. It's an exterior wall. Treat it like one, and use an exterior air barrier, and just inside the garage. Now we've avoided all that plumbing, all that sort of stuff. Makes it way easier. And then on the party walls, right, we want to see a transition through, right? It's 2 separate walls, but they need to connect too. The air barrier must be continuous. Must be continuous in order to work. And you can't have continuous if you've got 2 pieces of poly over 2 party walls. It's got to go through. And so our supervision is what takes care of this, right? We make sure that our framers understand that they're going to pre-strip and where they're going to pre-strip, and then it becomes a simple, easy detail. I think these are probably the two main reasons why Kevin's data shows that multifamily housing has poor air tightness rates up in that sort of higher level relative to single family. I think if I had to point to two things, it would probably be this thing. We see also things like this, right? Another reason to integrate your team is to bring your trades in, and so they understand what you're trying to do and what the goal of the notes on the plans mean. So this is pre-stripping gone wrong here, right? The framer knew they were supposed to pre-strip, but not why. And so they've left all kinds of gaps. This particular townhouse failed miserably. We retested it like 5 times, and they ended up having to do aero barrier, which still failed because their gaps were too big. It was just a lot of rework, wasted a ton of money, just because a trade didn't understand what they were trying to do, and the site supervisor never left the trailer. So if your site supervisor doesn't leave their trailer, hire a new site supervisor. The other problems we see are things like this, right? Inappropriate material choices. You know, spray foam in particular is a real sore point for me because we see so many fails in spray foam, just coming off the wood in particular. It's just not an appropriate air barrier. You don't need the spray foam. Go to an exterior air barrier, and then we can put a cheap fiberglass bat in that location, and job is done. No need for this, and we get a lot easier results out of it. You know, and simple solutions like this is another simple solution that came out of some integrated design sessions. This is a townhouse in Tsawwassen, right near Tsawwassen Mills there, and affordable housing complex. And these are the data cables that come out through the wall. So obviously the electrician didn't get the memo and just like drilled through the air barrier willy-nilly. But the solution was to take a piece of pond liner, cut some small holes in it, and shove all these pipes through. Worked great. Simple, easy. There's probably maybe $5 worth of material sitting there. And the even better part of this is now that electrician can yank on those tubes and not spoil the air barrier. So I really like solutions like this because they're adjustable and they're flexible, and they work really well. And this particular development did end up getting step 4. And if we look across the province to sort of where we're at, right, we know we have a timeline. The province has said, you know, we're going to get to step 4 in 2027. How are we doing? Well, here's year over year. This is the entire province's worth of data here. Now, there's not a ton of data in 2025 because this data pull was done in February, so we don't have a ton of houses there, so they're a little skewed a bit. But you can sort of see the trend there, right? The difference, though, I want to highlight the difference between the worst and the best results in this data set are, number 1, site supervision. You know, cell phone contractor types not doing well. Contractors that are on site paying attention or have good site supers or good lead carpenters. We've even seen where it is a first-year apprentice there, but that first-year apprentice is instructed to pay attention and let us know if anything goes wrong in this area, right? We are teaching air tightness in carpentry schools now, and have been for a number of years. BCIT does it, BIU does it, all the carpentry schools do it. And so these people coming out of these programs should know and can, you know, maybe tell you that things are going wrong here. And then the second difference is exterior air barriers. We're not doing the poly and caulk as our air barrier. Some of these places still do have poly and caulk, but that's not the primary air barrier. And so those are the two key differences, what we're seeing from the worst and the best. And trending this out, if we trend this out to 2027, when the step 4 requirement is supposed to be provincially mandated, you know, don't hold me to that, subject to political interference, timelines shift around, but that's the official timeline is 2027. We are actually on track for the average builder to meet step 5. That it's a steady downtick as people practice or figure this out and stuff like that. And I really like that idea that it's not actually space age materials. We're not going out and buying really expensive tapes and stuff, although, you know, I kind of like that stuff. It's just good site practice. That's really the only like change to get us up to these higher levels of air tightness. And looking at, you know, Fraser Valley, so this includes a little bit more than Langley area in our database here, but it's sort of that Fraser Valley. We have, in that database, we have 1,449 homes that met step 3. Interesting fun fact about these homes is that if these homes got a better air leakage, like if we took them and we moved them all to at least a 1.5 ACH, which would be the step 4, 468 of them would move up a step. So the only upgrade that basically a third of these houses need to move up one step is air tightness. That's it. So if we can get good site supervision, we can change to an exterior air barrier, which is arguably way easier than doing an interior, often cheaper. We can get to step 4 for most of these houses out there, at least for a third of them anyways. And the others, I'd be willing to bet it's a relatively simple design change to get us there. So we can get there without spending any real money. And I think that's a real win. And that is actually the way the code was designed as well. It was, like I said before, it was designed by builders, kind of for builders. And so, you know, this idea that you can design for it rather than spend money for it is really one of the underpinning ideas of how those metrics are designed. So moving on to mechanical systems here now, because this is something that I think has been a bit of a struggle for particularly the small spaces. You know, my own house is an example here, which is a house with a legal secondary suite. When we built it, because the energy load is so low, we actually couldn't get a heat pump small enough to serve this house. We now do have one because they became available and we had pre-plumbed for it and such, so it was relatively easy to install. But you know, there's lots of examples of that where the heat pumps available used to not be small enough to do the thing. Good news is there are now some really good options entering the market. And we're seeing a lot of these efficient small scale heat pumps / HRV units. So they're real compact size and both that's in their capacity. So they're, you know, they're not big. They're not the 40,000 BTUs, you know, sort of big jumbo things. And their physical size is very small as well. And these take care of ventilation, heating, and cooling. So it's an all-in-one kind of unit. And so for these small spaces, we're seeing this market really kind of take off because it is such a kind of a slick solution here for sure. And even better, no outside units. So no fan outside, which you know you can run afoul of some zoning bylaws and such, maybe noise bylaws, although those are kind of outdated and such for having that outside unit. And they're complicated to design too. If you've got a row of townhouses, like where do you put the outside unit? Do you put it in the front yard or the backyard or hang it on the roof or something like that? So these units eliminate that because it's all built into one unit and a relatively small one unit. So looking at some of the options that are available on the market today, and so we've used or had projects use all of these options now. The Innova makes a little heat pump. It's a through-the-wall heat pump, just has 2 6-inch holes in the wall. Now this is a heat pump only. It doesn't do ventilation as well. But for a small space, now we've met the cooling requirement and we've taken a good portion of our heating load. Certainly in the Langley area, it's probably going to be able to take all of the heating load. You know, as we get colder, maybe we go up the mountains a little bit. These units max out at -10, so they're not going to be 100% of your heating load in some areas, but certainly for the lower mainland, they do a fair bit of it. The other unit, this is the one that's integrated here. This is another Innova unit. They call it the vertical stack, but it also can go horizontal on the roof. This is something that you'd put in a small bulkhead, maybe in the roof of a bathroom or a closet. HRV and heat pump all built in, no outside unit at all. Minutair has a very similar unit, and actually one of the projects that we worked on in Tofino had one of these, and it was really nice. They just put it in the roof of a closet, fit in there seamlessly, and works really well. It's in Tofino, you know, much harsher environment than what you'd see in Langley in terms of, like, you know, bad weather and such, and works great. Provides 100% of the load for the house as well as the ventilation. Now, I don't know the cost on the Minutair system, but this little heat pump, we're installing those on a project for less than $2,000 a unit. And the vertical stack I believe we're under $3,000 a unit on that one for another project we're working on. So these are not expensive units. We are doing ductless mini splits on other projects as well, which works very well too if you've got the room on your deck or other places to put them. And we are seeing typically prices be less than $5,000 for those. So we're not seeing huge expenses associated with this. And I see Pauline's question, are we aware of the concerns about the through-the-wall heat pumps for the Innova systems? Yes, because they do drip. And so that is a design concern. I mean, all heat pumps have a condensate drain. I think it could be a design flaw in the Innova system where they drip out the exhaust pipe rather than having a separate drain. So you can put a separate drain on them, but the default is to drip out the sidewall. So a simple design change to have that condensate drain solves that problem, I think. The bigger units like the Minotaur and the all-in-one unit have a specific drain, and so that solves that problem as well. And the problem with the condensate drip, is that you've got a 6-inch pipe that's just going to be constantly dripping, and you're going to get a little drip down the side of your building, which is ugly. So, important to design these units as they're designed, right? Use them understanding what they're going to do. All heat pumps need a condensate drain, and so we design accordingly. Good question though, because that has come up. And there is more coming on the market. I mean, there's probably more than what I'm aware of here, and the prices are great. They really do fit these smaller scale buildings. And to put that into practice here, here's a garden suite, very simple, very cheap build sort of deal. You could imagine this as a townhouse or maybe as a small multi-unit residential if you took these units and stacked them up. I'm just using a townhouse example here, but this could be any different configuration. If we did an all-in-one unit, we might do something like locating it in the roof of the closet, right? So we shorten the closet by maybe 12, maybe a little bit more inches. Still plenty of room in that closet, no big deal. And then we vent out to the room. So we've got hardly any ducting in this house. Probably we might vent, with a little bulkhead across to the bathrooms and get the bathrooms with this as well. But you don't have to. Maybe it was easier to put an electric baseboard in there or something like that. Maybe we've got heated tile and we don't need the heat, and then we're just using conventional bathroom fans for the ventilation. Really good options, easy to locate, short ducting. So we're not paying for, all sorts of drywall work with the bulkheads. We're not paying for long ducting runs, all that kind of stuff. Very, very easy to do. If we're looking at that small through the wall type of heat pump, which there are a few different brands of that, we might put just one single unit in the living room. Just off to the side there. They're very compact. They only stick out about 6 inches. Very easy to install. They only require 15 amps of power, so we're not blowing the budget on the power hookups and such. And then we can add electric baseboards in all the other bedrooms. This little heat pump in a building this size is going to be doing 60, maybe 70% of the heating and cooling to make all rooms comfortable, not just not just the living room. And this would comply with that cooling code because we've now cooled one room. And we can show that through our CACEA F280 calculations that this one room is cooled satisfactorily to meet that standard to keep it under that 26 degrees. So, you're still going to need a separate ventilation system in this sort of in this case. But now you can have maybe a really small HRV in there doing its thing, and again simple venting that way. But lots of options. That's the point, is that we aren't stuck in central systems. Certainly in small missing middle housing, we're not seeing a lot of centrally ducted systems, at least not traditionally centrally ducted. And so that we're not seeing, but these sort of distributed, sort of smaller, kind of compact systems, we are seeing a lot of them, and they are very compact. And looking around the province again, just to sort of close things down here, we'll make sure folks can get out of here by 11 o'clock. At what's going on around the province, kind of by date, and this really ties into sort of what we've been talking about and the trends we're seeing. We are seeing a pretty big shift in, at least the start of a shift in how we're heating, or at least the fuel use across the province. So if we look at the, this is entire province here, look at the trends. There was a bit of a shift towards more gas over the last, kind of 4 years. There was a rebate program there. We might be able to attribute some of that to as well. Also gas is cheap. There's a lot of marketing going on. But that is now shifting, right? Now, gas is no longer the cheapest option. We're seeing a lot more smaller units where gas becomes quite a bit more expensive again. And we are seeing more dual energy systems come up here. That's this blue line. But we are seeing a shift back towards more electric systems. Looking at sort of specific areas, there's a bit of sort of interesting things in different areas as well. Greater Vancouver is actually very gas heavy, as is the Fraser Valley. But that's not true of the whole province. The Greater Victoria is back to almost 100% all electric again. And it's interesting in this, we look at like far north areas like Smithers, only 1 out of the 30 homes in our database that was built in the last 5 years uses gas as the primary fuel. And so it's not related to how cold the location is. We do hear a lot of people saying, oh, we need our gas furnace and we can't fit our gas furnace in our small houses. Well, you don't. There's cheaper options, and it's not about the temperature outside. It's really about what we have as a sort of tradition in our construction industry, right? Greater Vancouver and the Fraser Valley have had access to gas for a really long time. And so the tradition has built up that that's what you do. The Vancouver Islands only had gas for, I think, a couple of decades, and maybe 3 decades. I guess it was probably the 90s or maybe into the 80s when Vancouver Island got any sort of real gas. And so that tradition hasn't built up. There are also other places not particularly well known for their good weather, such as Invermere and Dease Lake, that are 100% all electric buildings, and they're using these sort of smaller, distributed systems more commonly than we are here in the South. And I think we can learn something from those northern builders, that these options exist. They're good. They've been tested, and they're really good for these sort of smaller scale housing. The size of housing actually decreases quite a lot as you go north. Fort St. John houses tend to be a lot smaller than Vancouver houses in particular, or Okanagan houses, where a small house is like 6,000 square feet. And so, we can take a lot of those lessons from those northern builders and what they're doing and apply them to our southern homes, save a lot of money, get high results on the step code, and sort of do really well going forward. My last slide here, I want to leave you with a little bit of trivia. And I'll leave this up for a second and let people answer, and we can start maybe doing questions. Then we'll answer this piece of trivia. My piece of trivia here is, where do builders achieve the highest average step code results in the province? I'm interested to see where people think that is. Guess it. If it's your hometown, you think your hometown's really good at it. I'll give you a hint. It's not Langley. But I'm interested to know where people think that is, and we could take a look at the questions. I've seen a few of the questions scroll by here, but I didn't get all of them. So, Kevin, I'm not sure if you've been curating them at all, but we could start going through those.
Thanks, Mark. And you know what? This workshop, this Builder Forum series, I think has had the most chatter, the most discussion in our chat box that we've ever seen in the last five-ish years. So that's awesome. And you're seeing some answers come in here.
I am. They're all wrong so far. So that's good, though. But I'm glad people are answering.
So we have about 15 minutes left. I'm gonna kind of just pick and choose a few questions for you to start on. There's a lot of chatter about power, and maybe if we have time, kind of right before 11, we'll call in Bertine if she's still here, or representative from Hydra if they're still here, to just touch on that. But I have some questions here for you, Mark, that you can answer.
Yeah, definitely. Those power questions, I think, are a key one we should really make sure we get to, because that is something Missing Middle has potentially struggled with. And I think there's some folks that are overestimating how much power they actually need. And that has been a big issue that has led to some significant expenses.
Absolutely, and fully agreed that if there's kind of a lack of knowledge around that, we want to get deeper into that. And I will note that because of so much chatter on power, I think we know what our next workshop's going to be on, and we'll hope to talk about power and small housing.
I think that would be a great one.
So Mark, so Jacqueline has a good question here. So there's this discussion about integrated design, and some folks we're calling it coordinated design now. And she asks, is integrated design another way of saying getting a construction manager, CCD5A? What are the contracts associated with it?
Yeah, so good. That's a really good question, actually. So there is a CCDC contract for an integrated design and delivery project. I can't remember what number it is, but there is one. I have never actually successfully used it. We've tried many times, and we like trying to work with CMHC and stuff like that. CMHC won't let us use it, so we haven't been successful in using it. But we've tried. Would love to, but yeah, as far as the contracts go, it's typically a design services agreement is what we're doing pre-construction. So all of our trades might do a design service agreement depending on the scale of the project, right? So definitely our builder would do that. And so it's just a mini contract. Again, we can use the CCDC. I think it's this 5A contract, and then you go to a 5B when you're in construction. Can't remember on the CCDC numbers. But that's how we're doing it, is that, for the smaller projects, it's just a simple design service agreement with the builder. Depending on how much time we're monopolizing of the trades, we may do a side agreement with them as well. And so they get paid for their time. But often it's like an hour meeting. They know they have the job because we're not shopping around that much at all. And so they'll give us that hour to have that meeting and kind of go with it. Still some more good guesses and still all wrong. But yeah, so simple contracts, I would say, and flexible to the size of the contract. But for our bigger Eastern developments right now, we are using the CCDC formats for that. And it is sort of a pre-design and then a construction format.
Thanks, Mark. I have another really good question here, and it asks, are you seeing prefab builds properly incorporating all of these step codes?
Yeah, we are actually, quite a lot of them. So our own developments are all in some way prefabricated and usually panelized, but we've also done, fully, modular units and such. But the key there is not the prefab. Like, our prefabbers tend to do a pretty good job, particularly the BC prefabbers. The challenge is not the prefab itself. The challenge is the joints. And so if you've got a panelized construction that's coming with weather barrier and air barrier on it, just careful detailing of those joints. Often that's relatively easy because the panels are square and you just tape them together, pretty easy. In the bigger modules, the joints between, you might have two modules that come together, and the joints between, again, relatively easy to wrap tape around that building. We did have a big project in Ellities, which is 45 minutes by boat from Port Alberni. And there they did really well on the seaming of the modules together. They did not so well on the seaming of the module to the foundation. And so they had to deal with their details there. But it was, it was a bit of caulking and some tape, right? Like, these aren't, crazy, crazy space age things. It's, you get out your caulking gun and your tape, and they solve the problem relatively easily. So pretty easy to overcome. I'm a big fan of prefab. I do think that's probably the future. We have heard some struggles of folks getting prefab in Alberta to come over, but there's a challenge of being out of province there because you're dealing with different codes, and they're trying to, do a set type of construction for probably 3 or 4 different codes, depending on where they ship to. And so that's more of that struggle there. If they're building a good quality product, they're not going to have a problem with our BC Energy step code. And I think, that's all we should hopefully worry about, is that if it's a good quality project, we should be fine.
Thanks, Mark. I have a good question here.
I see a follow-up on that from Aaron, actually.
Okay.
What if they arrive fully prefabbed and built, like a garden suite that could arrive sort of as one unit? Are they energy modeled? And the answer to that is yes. Unless it is a Z240 home, which is like a trailer home. Z240 is different. That goes its own thing. and you know, they're exempt from that. But if it's like going on a permanent foundation and it's a A277 home, that is a code compliant home, and it would be energy modeled. And we've done a bunch of these where we've energy modeled. We've even gone to the factory and tested in the factory. And you don't necessarily need to do that. We were doing that because it was early days and the factory wanted to know for sure that they were going to get it. But they worked really well. No issues to report there. We've had good success with fully prefab.
Okay, thanks, Mark. Mark, I have maybe a couple more questions, and we'll try to answer them relatively quickly, and if we can. Bertine, are you in the room? And maybe we could give her the last 5 minutes to provide some comments on a lot of the chatter here. I'm not sure if she's still here, but I'll just ping her now, and then Mark, I'll ask some questions to you, and if she's around, then she can speak to those.
Sure.
So here's an easy one. Then I'm gonna ask all of these questions at once. One's kind of easy, it's a quick one, and then some dialogue around integrated design. So first, somebody asked, what's the source for those charts? And it's referring to your mechanical system charts. Are these charts based on the gas permits pulled from contractors? And I think it's your trends on where you're seeing gas systems and not. And then a larger question, is integrated design easier for spec builders versus unique builds, which tend to not fully engage trades until the permit is issued?
So really good questions here. So first of all, the data is based on our heat database. It's heat.ca. If anybody wants to go visit it, that's our tool that we built to help energy models do things like parametric runs and do in-depth analysis on their step code homes. And so we've got about 5,000 homes recently built in that database now. It's not every single home in the province, but certainly a big, first, big database to give us a statistical reasonable thing here, but it is not every home. Lots of good things going on there. The second question was the integrated design one, right? Or did I already forget that?
No, yeah. Is it easier for spec versus unique builds, and how do you engage with trades? So
personally, I think spec building is easier in general because I don't like clients that much, and they always change things and ask for like 14 fireplaces and other stupid things. You're already easier off not doing a custom home. But yeah, if anybody's interested in building high performance, I would definitely recommend trying to do it spec first, because you don't have that client with competing interests. And that has been very good for us, because we have found that we can sell our high performance houses for more money and they don't cost more money to build. And so that's good developer math any day, right? And because it's a spec build, we're a little bit more certain on our timelines. We're a little bit more certain on our specs. We can dictate the specs. The specs are the specs, and they're staying what they are. And we can be a little bit more secure on what trades we use and stuff like that. So I definitely think it works very, very well on the spec build side. On the custom side, though, we have done it as well, and we participate. We don't custom build, but we do participate in the integrated design when we're working with custom builders. And I think there it can work very well. The key to that one, though, is bringing the client in too, particularly for those early meetings, because then the client is there to hear the discussions. They may not understand everything, but they're starting to gain that trust with the trades, and that they now understand that the trade understands. And so we can build that relationship with the client so that they're not waffling all over the place. They understand why we can't just go get the bathroom stretcher and make their bathroom bigger and stuff like that. And so that has been extremely helpful in the custom home side as well.
Thanks so much, Mark. Bertine, are you there, and are you able to? Great. So maybe, Bertine, there's a lot of chatter here about a number of topics. So maybe you can kind of just highlight and comment on a few of those and provide some information for the gang.
Yeah, I might have to squeeze that into 2 minutes, because I do want to hear what the trivia answer is. So yeah, lots of questions around BC hydro connections being a barrier to gentle densification, which is obviously a topic that we're quite familiar with. We've been working quite strongly with the City of Vancouver to figure out strategies, tools, opportunities to support the connection process for multi-unit residential housing in the city. There's certainly a connection piece, like figuring out what the service size is for those different units, but there's also a permitting triangle that we have to work with other local governments to figure out how we can speed that up, because it's not often just BC Hydro that's basically late in terms of responding to requests. It often has to do with local government permits and policies and requirements that we have to abide by as well. So we absolutely know that the builder is often kind of in the middle of that, and most often impacted by very long timelines to make these changes. I mentioned the power efficient design guide that we worked with the City of Vancouver on to bring some clarity into some of the electrical codes opportunities that exist today for multi-unit residential buildings specifically, to keep panel sizes low so that you don't have to deal with big upgrades on site in the first place. So that's a forthcoming resource that I will make sure to share with our partners once it is live on the website. City of Vancouver, I'm constantly in touch with them to figure out when that is going to be. They have presented on this design guide in the past already, so it's not super new information, but maybe new to folks here on the call. I'm also just about to respond to a comment that was made in the chat around our power supply in the province. There's a continuous laggard information that keeps on coming up in every single event that we have been participating in, and Mark and I can talk about this at length, where there's this idea that we would need, I don't know how many Site Cs to power our province. That's not the case. As you may be familiar or not, BC Hydro has 3 customer segments: an industrial customer segment, a commercial customer segment, and a residential customer segment. And the way how we deal with our power planning is we have to balance those 3. And we have been in a very lucky situation that our industrial customers have been declining over the last years, and that leaves a lot of room for residential and commercial sectors to grow. At this time, obviously, all 3 sectors are growing, so we are addressing that by putting out call for powers, one that has been completed already last year, another one that was just announced on Monday this week, where we're working with independent power producers to bring in more electricity into our grid. But as Mark also already mentioned, we are a Western integrated grid, so we are not going to run out of power here in BC. We have the ability to trade and electricity with our southern neighbors in the United States and our eastern neighbors in Alberta. So it's not that we're going to be running out, and we are very much on the pulse of where electrification is going at this time. So we are very much in a good position to respond to the needs of the future. So there shouldn't be any anxiety around where our electricity is coming from. That's actively being worked on, and we're not going to run out. The bigger challenge for us as a utility is distribution. So really making sure that the electricity we generate is getting into the places where it's needed. And that's where you probably see most of those kind of rubbing points, especially if you're doing gentle densification. So just giving you a little bit of that context. And yes, Mark, please, over to you to resolve the riddle.
Yeah, actually, somebody just got it, and I'm excited that somebody actually got it. I think it's a new there got it. Yeah, it's Dawson Creek, with an average step of 4.3 for its houses over the last few years. Runner up is Creston. Yeah, northern builders, and I like I say, like small houses, simple houses. They're just building like reasonable quality and good air tightness, and that's what they're doing. So there you go. If they can do it in Dawson, we can do it in Langley, for sure.
Thanks, Mark. Well, looks like we're at the end of our day. So everybody, let's thank Mark, David, Grant, and in a pinch, Bertine. Thanks for being here to answer all of these questions, and Mark, Grant, and David to deliver these great presentations. Everybody, please do our survey. We need to collect information on what's working, what's not working, and what you want to see next. It helps us continue to do these types of events. If you have any questions, you can email us at greenbillions@tol.ca. Do look out in your inbox in the next few weeks or so for a follow-up There's been a ton of chatter, a ton of questions, and I'm sure we didn't get to all of them. We will send out a follow-up document with answers, written answers to everything. And as well, I think with a lot of this chatter today around power and small buildings, I know what our next lecture will be on. So do keep an eye out for that. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you again soon.